Look, it's 2 a.m., right? You can't sleep. You pull out your phone and you type a question into Google that you would never, ever ask another human being out loud. We've all done it, right? But what you probably didn't realize is that your late-night, anxiety-fueled search history is actually the most accurate psychological profile of humanity ever created. Today, we are cracking open the data to see what everyone is secretly hiding, and I promise you, it is definitely not what you think. I mean, what if I told you that the people whose lives you envy most on Instagram, they're secretly Googling the exact same insecurities as you? Seriously, think about that for a second. We live in this era where it's just dangerously easy to look around and feel like you're the only one who doesn't have it all together. You scroll through your feed and you see nothing but perfect relationships, thriving businesses, flawless vacations, people who seem to wake up at 5 in the morning with endless motivation. It creates this heavy, suffocating feeling that you're somehow falling behind. But what if the data proved that practically all of it is a mirage? What if the numbers completely expose the fact that human beings are fundamentally deceptive to each other, but brutally honest to a blank search engine bar?
Today, we're going to dive into a concept that I promise will instantly cure your imposter syndrome and completely rewire how you look at the people around you. It comes from this fascinating book called Everybody Lies by Seth Stephens-Davidowitz. Now, Seth is a former Google data scientist, and he spent years digging into the raw, unfiltered data of what people actually search for online. And his core discovery? It's both shocking and incredibly liberating. He found that we spend our lives curating these fake, polished personas for the public, but when we are alone in the dark with a Google search box, we confess our deepest insecurities, our strangest desires, and our actual messy habits. He calls Google the digital truth serum. Pretty wild, right? Let's break down why this happens, because the data is just undeniable. Listen, human beings have this natural, hardwired desire to look good in front of others. Psychologists call it social desirability bias. We lie to our friends, we lie to our bosses. Heck, we even lie to anonymous surveys because we still want the invisible researcher judging us to think we are good, smart, successful people. There was this survey of university graduates where people were asked about their grades. Barely 2% admitted to graduating with a lower GPA when the real number was over 11%. Even when there are no stakes, we still feel the need to inflate our reality.
And look, nowhere is this inflation more toxic than on social media. Seth points out that Facebook and Instagram act as a digital brag serum. It's the place where we broadcast our cultivated selves, not our true selves. To prove this, he looked at a brilliant comparison between two magazines, The Atlantic, which is a highly respected intellectual publication, and the National Enquirer, that trashy, sensational tabloid. In the real world, these two magazines are equally popular. They sell about the same number of copies. But on Facebook, the story is crazy. People like and share The Atlantic 27 times more often. I mean, come on. People want their friends to think they're sitting around reading highbrow essays on economics, but the actual sales data proves they are secretly devouring celebrity gossip just like everybody else. This brings us to the core of the digital truth serum. Why do we tell Google the truth when we lie to everyone else? Because when you are sitting alone in your room, typing into that little white box, there is no judgment. There is no audience. You're just looking for an answer or a solution, or sometimes just a confession. You have zero incentive to lie to a search engine. And because of that, the data paints a picture of human nature that is vastly different from the one we see on our feeds. Let's look at relationships, for example. If you log on to social media, You see those endless anniversary posts, couples posing on the beach, people calling their partners the best, my best friend, and so cute. If you only looked at that, you'd think everyone was living in a fairy tale. But then, Seth looked at what women anonymously type into Google about their husbands. The top search completions? They are completely different. The top ways people describe their husbands to Google are gay, a jerk, annoying, and mean. The contrast is, well, it's staggering. We tend to hide our relationship struggles from the world, right? We feel like we are the only ones dealing with a partner who is being a jerk because all we see are our friends posting about how their husband is the greatest guy on earth. But the digital truth serum reveals that the exact same people posting those glowing tributes are often the ones turning to Google in tears, trying to figure out how to fix a broken dynamic.
And it's the same exact thing with intimacy. If you ask people on surveys about their sex lives, they paint a very vibrant picture. But the actual sales data for condoms, it's less than half of what people claim. Everyone is lying, everyone is drastically exaggerating because society tells us we're supposed to be having a lot of it. But what does Google say? Google searches reveal a much quieter, lonelier reality. The number one complaint about marriages on Google isn't about finances, it's not about the in-laws, it's not having sex. Searches for sexless marriage are 8 times more common than loveless marriage. Even among unmarried couples, the top complaint is a lack of intimacy. I want to just stop for a second and talk to you directly, right where you're sitting. Grab your coffee, settle in, and let's really unpack what this means for your everyday life. Because knowing these statistics is one thing, but applying this reality to your mindset, that's where the actual life change happens.
Look, we're living in an absolute epidemic of compare and despair. You know exactly what I'm talking about. It's that sinking feeling in your chest when you're having a rough day. Your house is a mess, your bank account is stressed, and you make the mistake of opening your phone. You see someone from high school announcing a massive promotion. You see a couple celebrating a flawless anniversary. And because you are living in your own messy, behind-the-scenes reality, you measure your struggles against their highlight reel. You convince yourself that you're the only one who finds life this hard. Listen, this data is your ultimate permission slip to let that burden go. The book, Everybody Lies, isn't just about data. It's a profound psychological relief. It proves, with billions of data points, that the picture-perfect lives you are comparing yourself to, they don't actually exist. They are an illusion. They are a curated performance driven by social desirability bias. When you feel the heavy weight of imposter syndrome, I want you to remember the digital truth serum. I want you to remember that for every polished, bragging post on a timeline, there are dozens of desperate, vulnerable searches happening in the dark. The CEO, who looks like they have everything figured out, they're Googling how to handle crippling anxiety at 3 in the morning. The couple posting the sunset selfie, they're Googling how to survive a sexless marriage. I mean, we're all just doing our best, right? Understanding this gives you a much more realistic baseline for what normal actually looks like. Normal is not having it all together. Normal is messy. Normal is being insecure. Normal is having doubts about your career, your relationship, and your self-worth. The data shows that humans are universally insecure, universally doubtful, and universally struggling to figure it all out. So why do we torture ourselves by pretending otherwise? Why do we hold ourselves to a standard of perfection that literally no one is actually achieving? Imagine the massive amount of energy you spend trying to hide your flaws.
Imagine what would happen if you took all of that wasted energy and redirected it into simply living your life, improving yourself at your own pace, and giving yourself grace when you stumble.
The next time you feel like a failure because your life doesn't look like an Instagram feed, I want you to stop and remind yourself of that Google search box. Remind yourself that everybody lies to the public, but the search data tells the true story of the human condition. You are not uniquely broken. You are not uniquely lost. You are just experiencing the normal, chaotic, beautiful, and difficult human experience. You don't need to feel embarrassed by your insecurities because millions of people are typing those exact same fears into their keyboards every single night. Let that truth wash over you. Let it free you from the exhausting game of comparison. When you finally stop measuring your real life against everyone else's fake life, you open up the space to actually be happy with who you are. And that, more than any social media metric, is what true self-improvement is all about.
Look, stop trusting your gut. Seriously. I mean, big data proves your intuition is actually setting you up for failure. Crazy, right? Listen, we've been told our entire lives to just listen to that little voice inside our heads. We worship this myth of the visionary genius, right? The Steve Jobs or Elon Musk types who just magically know exactly what the world wants before the world even knows it. We are sold this romantic idea that if you just tune in to your intuition, you'll make the right decisions in your business, in your relationships, and in your life. But what if that is completely backwards? What if trusting your gut is actually the exact thing keeping you stuck? According to some fascinating insights in the book Everybody Lies, our intuition is clouded, biased, and honestly, it's pretty terrible at predicting reality. We think we have a good read on the world, but our brains are actually wired to fall into massive cognitive traps. Like, for example, our intuition is incredibly vulnerable to dramatic stories. If you ask people in a survey what is a more common cause of death, tornadoes or asthma, most people will say tornadoes. Why? Because tornadoes make the evening news. They're dramatic, they're memorable. In reality, though, asthma causes about 70 times more deaths than tornadoes. But your gut doesn't know that. Your gut just remembers the scary footage on TV. And look, we also give way too much weight to our own personal isolated experiences. In the book, Seth talks about his grandmother. She gave him relationship advice based on decades of observing her friends and family. Her big rule: successful couples need to share a core group of common friends. It makes intuitive sense, right? If you hang out with the same people, you'll stay together. But when researchers looked at the largest data set on human relationships ever assembled, which is Facebook, they found the exact opposite. Having a common core group of friends is actually a strong predictor that a relationship won't last. Couples with separate social circles actually have stronger relationships. Grandma's gut instinct was, well, it was completely wrong. She only had a tiny sample size of her own life to draw from. So, if our gut is this unreliable, what do we even do? Well, we do what the most successful companies and political campaigns in the world do. We stop guessing and we start testing. We A/B test our lives.
Now, if you're not familiar with A/B testing, it's basically just a randomized experiment. You try option A on one group, option B on another group, and you see which one actually works better. It sounds incredibly simple, right? But it has completely revolutionized the internet. Back in the year 2000, Google engineers had this debate about whether they should show 10 links per page or 20. Instead of sitting in a boardroom arguing about whose intuition was better, they just ran a test. They showed some users 10 links and some users 20 links, and then they measured who came back to the site more often. That simple mindset shift, testing instead of guessing, That's what built Silicon Valley. And look, it doesn't just work for tech companies. It works for everything, even presidential elections. During the 2008 Obama campaign, his team wanted to figure out how to get more people to sign up and donate on their website. Now, intuition might tell you that a presidential candidate needs to look serious, authoritative, right? So their default idea was to use a solemn photo of Obama looking very presidential, with a button underneath that simply said, "Sign up." But a brilliant data analyst named Dan Siriker decided to run an A/B test. They tested different photos, some serious, some casual, some of him with his family. And they tested different buttons, sign up, join us now, learn more. What won? It was not the serious photo, and it was definitely not the sign up button. The winning combination was a warm picture of Obama with his family, paired with a button that said, "Learn more." That single, data-driven tweak generated an estimated 40% more signups, which brought in an additional $60 million for the campaign. $60 million just because they refused to trust their gut. Crazy, right? The Boston Globe did the exact same thing with their news headlines. They thought they knew what their readers wanted, but when they actually A/B tested their headlines, the results constantly defied logic. Sometimes a headline with lots of specific details won, sometimes a short, vague headline won. Sometimes slang worked, and sometimes it completely failed. The CEO of a massive entertainment site summed it up perfectly when he said, "At the end of the day, you cannot assume anything. Test literally everything. People are fundamentally unpredictable. Your intuition will fail you, but the data will not."
All right, let's step back from the massive data sets and billionaires for a second. Let's talk about you and me. How does this actually apply to your life on a Tuesday morning? I want you to imagine we're just sitting in a coffee shop right now, talking about your goals. Maybe you're trying to start a side hustle. Maybe you want to get into the best shape of your life. Maybe you're trying to finally stick to a morning routine. Or you're out there in the dating world just trying to find a real connection. I hear so many people say things like, "I just don't know what the right move is," or "I'm waiting for my gut to tell me what to do." Or they try one morning routine for 2 days, it feels terrible, and they declare, "Well, I guess I'm just not a morning person." My friend, listen, you do not need to be a visionary genius who just magically knows the right answer. In fact, relying on some mystical gut instinct is letting you off the hook. It is keeping you paralyzed. The secret to getting unstuck is to stop agonizing over the perfect choice and start running rapid, low-stakes experiments in your own life. You need to become the mad scientist of your own potential.
Let's say you're trying to build a consistent workout habit, but you keep failing. Your gut might tell you that you're just lazy, right? Or that you need more willpower. But what if you just have the wrong variables? Run an A/B test. Next week, make your goal to work out at 6 in the morning before you check your email. That's option A. See how it feels. Track your consistency. The following week, make your goal to work out at 5:30 in the evening right after you shut your laptop. That's option B. Don't judge it, don't moralize it, just look at the data. Which week did you actually hit your goals? Maybe you're launching a freelance business or trying to get clients online. Stop sitting in your bedroom for 6 months agonizing over the perfect website design or the perfect brand colors because your gut says it has to look a certain way. Listen, you're relying on a faulty gut. Put out 2 different offers. Send out 2 different styles of cold emails. Post 2 different types of content. Let the market tell you what works. Let the data give you the answer. If an email subject line gets completely ignored, great, you just gathered data. Now try a different one. This even applies to your social life and dating. If you're using a dating app and getting nowhere, stop assuming there's something wrong with you. You're probably just using a bad combination of photos and prompts. Test a completely different profile. Test a goofy bio instead of a serious one. Try asking a different opening question when you message someone. See what actually gets a response. It's all about the numbers, right?
Do you see how incredibly freeing this is? It completely removes the heavy burden of having to be perfect. You don't have to be a genius. You don't have to have everything figured out in advance. You just have to be willing to test, measure, and adjust. We put so much pressure on ourselves to have a perfect intuition, to just feel what the right path is. But human beings are incredibly complex, and our brains are full of blind spots. We hold on to dramatic memories, we overvalue our own limited experiences, and we completely misjudge what other people actually want or need. When you let go of the ego of needing to be right on the first try, you unlock a superpower. You realize that failure is literally just data collection. When a habit doesn't stick, when a business idea flops, when a conversation falls flat, it is not a reflection of your worth. It's just option A failing the test. That's it. It means it's time to try option B. Success is not a mystical gift bestowed upon a lucky few who have a magical gut instinct. Success is a highly replicable formula. It's about having the humility to admit that you do not know all the answers, but you are relentless enough to keep testing until you find them. So, stop sitting around waiting for your intuition to give you a blinding flash of clarity. Stop trusting a gut that the data proves is terribly biased. Go out there, try something new, measure what happens, and let the real world tell you exactly what you need to do next. I mean, what if there was a mathematical formula, right? A formula that could predict exactly where you'll be in 5 years, just by looking at the people who are exactly like you. Look, we absolutely love to believe that we are completely unique, right? Here in America, we are obsessed with this myth of the visionary, the lone wolf, the self-made success story who defies the odds through sheer willpower. We're sold this incredibly romantic narrative, that if you just wake up at 4 in the morning, grind harder than everybody else, and pull yourself up by your bootstraps, your success is completely guaranteed. We're told our destiny is entirely in our own hands, fueled by our own personal drive. But what if the hard data completely shatters that narrative? I mean, what if the biggest predictor of your future health, your future wealth, and your ultimate success is not your morning routine or your hustle, but rather your statistical doppelgangers and the exact zip code you live in? Crazy, right? Today, we're diving into a mind-blowing concept from Seth Stephens-Davidson's book, Everybody Lies. This concept is based on a massive shift in how we understand human behavior through big data. It turns out, by zooming in on millions of data points, analysts can find your exact data twin, your doppelganger. And by looking at what happens to the people who share your precise traits, habits, and circumstances, they can predict your future with terrifying accuracy. To really grasp how powerful this is, you have to hear the story of the legendary baseball player David Ortiz, Big Papi. Back in June of 2009, it looked like Ortiz was completely finished. He was 32 years old, his batting average had plummeted, and his power seemed to have just vanished overnight. Famous sports writers were publicly declaring that his career was over. They said when a big, heavy slugger loses his swing, he never gets it back. Based on intuition, the Red Sox probably should have cut him right then and there. But a statistician named Nate Silver had developed a totally new way to predict the future. He built a model called PCODA. Instead of just guessing based on gut instinct, this algorithm scanned a database of every Major League Baseball player in history,
over 18,000 men. The system looked for David Ortiz's doppelgangers. It searched for the 20 historical players who most perfectly matched his exact height, age, position, and stats. In other words, it found the men who were statistically identical to David Ortiz. Then, the algorithm simply looked at what happened next to those 20 men. Did their careers end at 32? The data said no. His doppelgangers, players like Jim Thome, actually regained their world-class power in their late 30s. Because the data predicted a comeback, the Red Sox kept him. And what happened? In 2013, at the age of 37, David Ortiz batted a staggering .688 in the World Series and won the MVP award. He was back, and it was all in the data.
Look, this doppelganger effect is not just for sports. It's the exact same math that powers the modern internet. It's how Amazon knows exactly what book you want to buy before you even search for it. They find 1,000 people who have your exact purchase history, see what those people bought next, and recommend it to you. It's how Netflix predicts what movies you'll watch. I mean, they don't care about what you tell surveys you want to watch. They care about what your data twins actually click on. Now, this is where it gets deeply personal and incredibly relevant to your own life. When we apply this big data zooming in technique to normal, everyday people, it completely destroys the myth that your success is solely based on your internal motivation. Your environment, your micro surroundings, and the peers you share space with, they have a massive, mathematically proven impact on where you end up. Consider the research by Stanford economist Raj Chetty. Chetty and his team were given access to the tax records of every single American since 1996. We're talking about over 1.2 billion observations. When they zoomed in on this ocean of data, they asked a simple question. Is America actually the land of opportunity? Can a kid born into poverty predictably rise to the top? The data revealed that the answer entirely depends on the exact zip code you live in. If you're born poor in San Jose, California, your chance of reaching the top income bracket is almost 13%, which is incredibly high. But if you're born poor in Charlotte, North Carolina, your chance drops to just 4.4%. I mean, think about that. The exact same level of talent, the exact same level of drive, but a completely different result purely because of the physical environment. Chetty's team proved this was a causal effect, not just a coincidence. They tracked families who moved from a bad city to a good city, and the data showed that simply relocating a child to a better microenvironment dramatically and mathematically increased their future earnings. Your willpower is a factor, absolutely, but your zip code might actually be the ceiling on that willpower. And listen, this environmental contagion effect bleeds into every single aspect of your life. The data proves that habits literally spread like viruses within local environments. Chetty's team found that poor people who live in cities with a lot of rich people, like New York City, live significantly longer than poor people in cities like Detroit. Why? Because health habits are contagious. When you live in an area where people exercise, eat well, and don't smoke, you subconsciously absorb those behaviors. You catch the health habits of your geographic doppelgangers. It works for bad habits too, right? The data showed that self-employed people with one child have a massive incentive to claim exactly $9,000 in income to maximize their tax credit. Random audits proved that a huge number of these people were completely faking that number. But here's the crazy part. The people cheating on their taxes were highly clustered in very specific neighborhoods. It wasn't that people in Miami were inherently more evil than people in Philly. It was simply that living near other people who knew how to cheat the system dramatically increased your odds of doing it too. Behavior is contagious. Even extreme success and fame follow this geographical rule. Seth Stephens-Davidowitz did an exhaustive study of Wikipedia to see where the most famous Americans are born. If success was just about raw individual genius, these people should be born randomly all over the map, right? But they're not. They are overwhelmingly concentrated in major cities, and specifically in small college towns like Ithaca, New York, or Ann Arbor, Michigan. Growing up in a town stewing with innovative ideas, diverse immigrants, and highly accomplished people literally stacks the mathematical odds that you will become a notable success. I mean, if we were sitting across from each other in a coffee shop right now, just talking about your goals, your frustrations, and your future, this is what I would want you to truly understand. We beat ourselves up so much. We read these self-help books that tell us if we're not wealthy, if we're not healthy, if we're not wildly successful, it's because we lack discipline. We think we just need to hustle harder. We think our internal engine is broken.
But the data from Everybody Lies flips the script entirely. It tells us that your willpower is fighting a losing battle if your environment is working against you. You are constantly being influenced, shaped, and molded by the people immediately around you. You are slowly morphing into your data doppelgangers. If you're surrounded by people who don't prioritize their health, you will statistically struggle with your health. If you live in a microenvironment where ambition is mocked, your sheer willpower is going to hit a mathematical wall. Now, this is not meant to be depressing. In fact, it's the most empowering piece of information you can possibly receive. Because once you stop pretending that you're a lone superhero who can conquer any environment, you can actually start treating your life like a scientist. You can start hacking the math. If the data definitively proves that your peers, your city, and your inputs dictate your outcomes, then your number one priority in life shouldn't be forcing yourself to work harder. No, your number one priority should be engineering your environment. You need to consciously place yourself in the exact soil that naturally produces the results you want. You need to find the people who already have the habits you want, and you need to get as close to them as physically possible.
So if you want to level up your career, you might actually need to pack up your car and move to a city where your specific industry is thriving. The math says that just being in the radius of that success will passively increase your own odds. If you want to change your physical health, you have to audit your social circle. If your current friends spend every weekend binge drinking, the data says you will too. You have to actively insert yourself into environments like a run club or a local gym community where the contagious behavior is actually the behavior you want to catch. Look, we have to stop relying solely on our gut instinct and our raw discipline. The most successful corporations in the world don't run on intuition. They run rapid experiments. They look at the data and they scale what works. You have to start treating your own life with that exact same level of strategic respect. Start looking closely at your own doppelganger group. Look at the 5 people you spend the most time with. Look at the media you consume. Look at the culture of the town you live in. Are these the inputs that mathematically output the life you're trying to build? If they're not, no amount of early morning alarms will save you. You don't need to be a visionary genius to succeed. You just need to respect the data. Stop fighting the current of your environment and start intentionally building an environment that pulls you automatically and inevitably exactly where you want to go.